There we go.
All right. There you go. Okay. So here's the things that I would like to uh, have like a conversation with you, because you and I have a lot of these conversations that I think they're necessary conversations to be had out in the open. And I love that you and I can sit, even if we have different perceptions with some of these things, we can sit here and have an open hearted conversation about it and accept and respect each other's understanding of it,
Mhm.
whatever it is that we talk about. So, like, the first thing that I really, really wanted to get your perception on is the most popular thing right now is the dimensions, right? The 4D, the 5D, and the 6D, and all of the dimensions. And I seem to have a different perception, or the transmission that I receive seems to be a bit different than what most people understand. So I wanted to see your perception of it.
Yeah, I find it very similar to, for me, dimensions are not really places. Like many people see it as different places or
Right,
different realities
right.
or different planes of existence. But for me, dimensions are more specific perspectives, like how you choose to see or understand your reality around you. So the reality doesn't necessarily change, like, now you're somewhere else. It's more of
Mm-hmm.
a shift in perspective or a shift in mindset to me. Well, that's how I understand it from the communication that I receive from my guides and my higher self. It's almost like whenever I go through an experience and say it's an unpleasant experience and I, would like to experience something else, I wouldn't necessarily go outward or externally focused. This needs to change. I would rather shift my perspective
Right.
on looking at the experience, understanding why it came into my reality, come back to myself, shift within me. And as you shift within that perspective, that is when your reality shifts for you, around you. So it's almost like the dimensions to me is more of a alignment that you come into, shift the perspective into like a unconditional perspective or a neutral point perspective, and then that shifts the understanding with regards to the experience. Like, for example, let me give you an example. So
Mm-hmm.
the other day I was driving, and a very, very inconsiderate driver drove in front of me and almost pushed me off of the road. Now, immediately, as we are human, I felt quite triggered. I was like, and as we usually do, want to project that trigger onto that person. But what I did instead was I want to shift my perspective. And instead of thinking about this person as a inconsiderate driver, shift the perspective to what I would like to experience, and that is considerate drivers. So I
Yes.
said to him, "Thank you for being such a considerate driver."
Yes.
The moment I did that, I received this beautiful communication from my higher self saying, the reason that happened was to give you the opportunity to shift your perspective into
Right.
understanding his experience, but also not limiting him in the experience he's having. So
And
creating
not
the
judging him too. Right.
is creating the opposite polarity of the experience. Then you have both now, and then you can integrate them into one, convergence point to a sense, which is that neutral perception, which is unconditional love. And
Love.
then in that
Yep.
moment, I actually realized why I was there. on that road, because I was also on the wrong road while that happened, it was to give me the opportunity
Yeah.
to shift those cycles that we go through. Like, let's just reference back to that. Usually we will call it timelines, but it's more accurate referring to them as cycles, as you've explained before to me.
Right. Yes.
And I shifted a cycle where I could allow that experience from an unconditional perspective and understand where he's coming from, understand what I choose to create in my reality. And the reason I was on the wrong road was to give me that opportunity. And because our higher selves do know, have a bit of a higher perspective, the reason I was probably on that wrong road was because I was in that specific perspective that I wasn't truly wanting to align with, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yes.
Gave me the opportunity to realign back to that 0 point, and then the moment I shifted my perspective, I found myself turning off to the right road. Do you see? And this is a place I've never been before, and that was simply through that internal guidance. So this is what I mean with that. When we speak about dimensions, I feel it is perspective shifts, it's mind shifts, it's becoming the architect of your reality and a true creator. You're shifting yourself into your architecture of what you want to experience, what you choose to experience. And I always believe as well, only humans have created numbers and time. And what is time but numbers? So when we, go into ninth dimension, fifth dimension, fourth dimension, we are again separating. So why would we separate if we can integrate instead and get that perspective that is from the unconditional point, that does not choose any specific side, but allows all experiences to occur because they all exist within the source energy.
Yes. I love that you said that. So, okay. So just to kind of make it a little bit more clear. So dimensions is a consciousness. With dimensions, it's everything is energy, right? Consciousness is energy. So dimensions, it's a frequency of consciousness, right? And from what I have been receiving in communication through my soul council is that dimensions, just like you said, they coexist within our universe. All the levels coexist, just like all the energies coexist within each other. And dimensions overlay, there's energy flow overlays, and it's a conscious vibration that you can literally flow from high to low all the time. And like you said, numbers were technically created by humans to understand, to measure things, right? To be able to measure things. But if we take the fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh and all the way, they go like above 10 dimensions, right? Like the way I am being shown is that they overlay each other, right? So you can be here and there at any moment of your choice of your consciousness, right? So I also wanted to talk to you about the what's the word, the density. Thank you. The density, because I feel like a lot of people believe that higher dimensional beings per se have different density to them, right? And that is not what I received. I have communicated with a lot of like 9 and 8 dimensional beings, galactic beings, and they have like, they're solid. So if they were to show up on this planet in my reality where I am right now, they're not going to be like these see-through things just because they are higher vibrational beings, it doesn't mean that they are like thin air, because they're
Yeah.
vibrating at a much higher frequency, right? We have this perception that the higher you go in dimension, the more you become lighter. And that's not what I'm receiving. I have
Mm.
communicated with so many um, different dimensional beings, and some of them are light, and some of them have like the solid structure to them, just like we do in human form, right? And so I know, I also heard a lot of people say that as we ascend and as we move into higher dimensions, eventually humanity will reach the seventh dimensional way of being. A lot of people talk that we will have lighter bodies, but that is not necessarily what I am receiving either, because um, let's just say um, Jesus, Joshua, I call him Joshua because that's how he comes to me, Joshua. He's a seventh and eighth dimensional being, and when he showed up onto this planet, he showed up in a light in a solid body. He didn't show up as a, the see-through being that just kind of floats through everyone. So I wanted to hear your perspective on that too. So, like, to sum it up, what I understand, that all dimensions coexist within each other, within our universe, right? All dimensions interflow. You can shift consciously from low to high, from high to low at all times. It's your choice on what dimension you want to consciously operate at, right?
Yeah.
And um, collectively, though, as a human species, we are now choosing to operate more on a fifth and sixth dimensional consciousness. But there's always gonna be, like, the fourth dimension is not gonna go anywhere just because we as a species elevate consciously. Some people think like, oh, we are now away from the fourth dimension. No, the
Mhm.
fourth dimension is always gonna be part of this universe, part of everything, like you, right? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yes, I totally agree with you. And I feel the word density is just another word for level. That's all, you know,
Okay, yeah,
or
yeah.
that dimensional level or whatever. It's once again a way of measuring.
Measurement, right.
Yeah.
It's a way to measure.
Yeah. So, I've also, with the work that I do, um, communicate with many different galactic beings and
Mm-hmm.
also earth beings, who are in what we would say, in a higher frequency, or just, I just like to call it a different frequency of light, you know, they're
Yeah,
just more an awareness of how much light they have. And there again, as human, I try to measure this, but this is something that we need to kind of like conduct more accurately, like we were speaking about the different terms that we use as well.
yeah.
So, what I mean by this is when we communicate with these beings, we essentially tapping into that layer over layer, holographic, unlimited playground or quantum field, as some people call it. And
Mm-hmm.
just because they are in a different dimensional state or frequency or higher frequency, like we call it, they're actually just in a different perspective. And that doesn't mean that they can't have a specific vessel in that
Right,
perspective.
right.
So, like, I mean, many times, when I have communicated with the Arcturians, um, many people would ask me, what kind of dimensional beings are they? And then the number 12 would come through. But I've asked
Mm-hmm.
Archer, why do you give me the number 12 if we not really, have to focus on these measurements?
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, they give the number 12 to help us understand
Right.
what capacity we can actually
Right.
shift our
Reach. Yes.
perspective to. Yes,
Yes.
because we focus on three because we think we're in three-dimensional beings and
Right.
that's who we are. But they give 12 to show you how you can expand so
Right.
much in
Right.
your perspective. And the more you expand, the more you expand.
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
yeah, until you
Yeah, I love
experience
it. I
whatever.
love that you said that
Yeah.
because like I when I communicate with all these beautiful cosmic galactic beings with whichever dimension they come from, they never come to me and say, "Hey, we're from 12th dimension. We're from 13." They just show up to deliver the information, and the information is just like in the moment of where I am, it blows my mind because it's so intellectual. So naturally, I feel like it's a higher dimensional information because I am receiving it in my perception from a higher dimensional entity when they've never looked at us lower than they are. They, like you said, communicate this information to us just so that we can understand in the present moment of where we are, of how expensive we really are collectively, right? Because we all part of the same universe. Like Earth never says, "Hey, Saturn," like how are you vibrating today? Like, what's your vibrate? Like, so what is it? I wonder sometimes, what is it about our species, like this human collectiveness, that we really have to put a measure, whether it's in levels or like we really do try to measure everything out. Like I always wonder, like where that comes from. It's almost like validating, like um
Yeah. I think it's because human beings, you know, the experience we've had for the last, I would say, 2000 plus years, if
yeah,
we go back to Egypt, maybe 8,000 years, so 68,000 years,
right.
we have, I feel, entered a perspective, let's call it perspective instead of a
Mm-hmm.
dimension, where one is more and another is less, you see.
Yeah,
And that was the perspective, and it's a valid perspective and a valid experience. But I think it comes from that kind of belief or perspective where, well, if I'm more and you're less, then that must mean there's something in between.
yeah. Well, also, I think
This number.
it's each frequency in its experience, and this is what was gonna like what you and I originally wanted to talk about, the integration of the words, right? Like you and I both been receiving the importance of integrating the words from one frequency to another. Um, and I think it's because of the experiences that we have within each frequency and within each vibration do are so different that we almost then it's natural for us to put a measure to it or a level to it, so
Yeah,
that we can perceive it. Okay, well, even the emotion of it, of how it feels. Joy
yeah,
feels much more vibrant and elevated than sadness, right? Where
yeah,
for a lot of multigalactic beings, they don't have that measure. Joy is joy, sadness is sadness, right?
yeah,
But we get to experience it in a human body in a much different energetic vibration and frequency, I feel. And so like the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is the shift in the integration of the words that we use.